Boy, I've got a challenge for business owners. This is one of the biggest things that we struggle with around the world, and it's the business owner's secret weapon. And it's this idea of solitude. Hey, it's Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose. Make sure to go check us out, mybusinessonpurpose.com/healthy. And you can check the health of your solitude within the bounds of your business. See, we assume because of our modern loneliness epidemic that being alone is bad, not realizing that there are healthy forms of loneliness and there are also unhealthy forms of loneliness. The legendary John Prine wrote a powerful song entitled "The Speed of the Sound of Loneliness." And his lyric lends insight into a common reality that leaders all experience. He says this: "You've broken the speed of the sound of loneliness. You're out there running just to be on the run." After launching and incubating and or maybe even purchasing a business, the owner or a founder begins running at a speed that very few can or will match in the remaining days, years, and decades of the business. And for many, it's a hyper speed, a superhuman pace, unsustainable over time. There is a sound to loneliness, believe it or not. It's a narrative, a rhythm that can be of great value to the leader. But for most, we just ignore it, pass and blast right through it, that speed of the sound of loneliness. And we continue running at a superhuman pace because it's the only way to give momentary satisfaction for our obsession with productivity. See, we make excuses and say that we really do care about quality or customer service, when in reality, what we care about is that this perfect business we grew has no spot or blemish when placed into the care of other people. But the reality is we know that there are warts, there are blemishes, there are imperfections, and loneliness forces us to see those. Loneliness forces us to reckon with our own humanity, our own limitations. Loneliness offers an opportunity to find joy in the imperfections or to deny that the imperfections can exist and pick up the speed of our running so that we can feel like we're doing something. There was a dear mentor of mine told me back in November of 2015, he said, "Scott, my favorite thing about you is not your productivity. It stung. See, I'm well known and regarded precisely for my productivity and affinity for systems and processes, and my friend took a surgeon's scalpel to the thing that I embrace the most." His encouragement actually felt like rebuke, and it was needed. It would have never been heard without time and space for relationship. It's really an ironic twist on solitude. See, there's healthy loneliness and there's unhealthy loneliness. There are healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships. And if you are to be an executive leader of impact, then you will make time for solitude. I was recalling a story of how Nike wooed Michael Jordan as its game-changing endorsement personality. It was well played in the movie Air. Sonny Vaccaro was shocked when Nike founder Phil Knight decided to change his mind and commit the entirety of the Nike basketball endorsement bank, the money, to one player. And that one player was Michael Jordan. Originally against the unprecedented idea, Vaccaro asked Knight, "So what changed?" Knight's response, "I went for a run." Now, the story may only be partially true, but the principle is very true. A portion of that solitude, in Phil Knight's case for getting away on an isolated run, will be committed to a few meaningful, sincere, and intentional relationships. And it often breeds about some aha moments. Relationships with people in person, we can also have relationships with people in publication. What do I mean by that? Well, nearly 1 out of every 2 adults has not read a book in the past 12 months. That simply cannot be an option for an executive leader. If an executive leader is creating proximity to motivate a team to pursue the named future you see, then part of that proximity you create are towards relationships that can provide mutual sourcing, both for motivation and for vision. Rarely does a person develop a vision from nothing. We all generate vision from a body of source material, experiences, inputs. It could be time by ourselves. We have an aha moment like Phil Knight on a run, or it could be time in relationship with people, either in person or in publication. Leaders need curated input. But too often we crank up the volume of the masses in the search for the non-caloric silver bullet instead of eagerly pursuing the small, subtle voice of wisdom that's dripping with sustenance. So how do we know if our time is being devoted to wise solitude, whether alone or with someone, or if it's being devoted to noisy isolation as we infinitely scroll the doomsday logs at the ready in our feeds? Well, there's something we've called the solitude matrix that helps us to understand where we can make time for solitude, both alone and with others. So imagine a quadrant. You've got the horizontal axis where the top is devoted to substance on the left and surface on the right. Then you've got the vertical axis. In this case, it's on the left side of our quadrant. It's devoted to solitary at the top and social at the bottom. So when a leader devotes themselves top right to surface level conversation in a solitary surrounding, it leads to the hopelessness of unchecked voices in our mind, a belief that what you see is always because perspective has no access and solutions are fabricated. Now, when a leader devotes themselves bottom right to a surface level conversation in a social surrounding, so not isolated, but with other people, but it's surface level, it leads to an interaction that feels fake, not a relationship, but an obligation. In these fake interactions, we find ourselves obsessed with who's got it more together and wanting to become the highest spender so that we can steal the show. Fake conversations leave us empty. Now, when a leader devotes themselves to substance-level conversation in a social surrounding, that would be the bottom left of our quadrant. They're actively building relationships. There's a focus on connecting with a healthy mix of emotion and empathy. And a relationship interaction from a leader is comfortable with awkward silence because simple presence is valued. And there is a shared decor. It could be a swag, a logo, food, an event. It's all meaningful. Now, in this top left quadrant, this is the hallmark. When a leader devotes themselves to substance-level conversation in a solitary surrounding, they achieve the hallmark of leadership: wisdom and vision. Healthy solitude allows for active listening by reading or thinking, writing to capture what they hear, thoughtful planning to map out clarity, and intentional reflection to celebrate wins and to mourn losses. Sherry Turkle defines healthy solitude as the time you become familiar and comfortable with yourself. She goes on to say, without solitude, we cannot construct a stable sense of self. See, solitude with distraction robs us of that, leaving us confused and setting up to hurt other people. This leads to the myth of the modern brainstorming session, by the way, to be our primary mode of breeding helpful bouts of creativity. Turkle says that on brainstorming, our brains are most productive when there is no demand that they be reactive. New ideas are more likely to emerge from people thinking on their own. Solitude is where we can learn to trust our imagination. Solitude is the healthy version of being alone. On the other hand, the philosopher and theologian Paul Tillich says, language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, but it has created the word solitude to express the glory of being alone. Loneliness is painful because it allows the space for shame to be revealed. Shame in our past, shame in our present. When we medicate this shame with the substance of busyness, then we ensure that shame remains safely swept under the rug. Loneliness is not the same as solitude. Picasso said this, and I thought it was great. Without great solitude, no serious work is possible. The human spirit, the leader, needs healthy alone time. And as an owner, I want to encourage you to block your time so that you've got solitude, not isolated loneliness, but solitude. Because without great solitude, no serious work is possible.